Hey guys, Max here. Let's talk about the new iPad Pro 13-inch with M4 chip, and this one has 512 gigabytes. For me personally, I did not need such high storage. 512 is much more than enough for me, and I definitely did not need the nano texture display. Overall, I think it's a negative for nanotexture as far as for my usage because I want to see beautiful display. Rather deal with reflections, but at least not to deal with an additional layer on top of display, which kind of takes away, in my opinion, from the quality of display. So, but I totally see why somebody would go for nanotexture. For example, if an individual who always works in a lightly lit environment, like outside in daylight, this display is not going to be as vibrant. So having that additional layer on top of it completely makes sense because the reflection is what becomes an issue without having that nano texture. And also, I see it completely where it makes total sense for people that work in that industry, like photo editing, graphical designs, video editing, and all that. I kind of see why somebody would go for a nano texture. Personally, I don't need it. I use iPads to watch movies, browse the web, shopping, message, basic things that I do on the iPhone. But unfortunately, at this point, that's what iPad OS is. It's just an enlarged iPhone, in my opinion. So, which brings me to a question, why would Apple push a product that is so powerful, but yet it's only able to do basic things that pretty much an iPad has been able to do for years? It still runs iPhone applications that slightly enlarged, that don't take the full real estate of a display. It doesn't go from edge to edge of a display, just large in iPhones. Those that are not iPad OS applications, or even some applications which are iPad OS but only work in portrait mode or landscape, especially if I'm using the keyboard and then I open application and now I'm forced to use it in portrait. Still don't make sense, especially when the iPads are getting more and more powerful, but the OS is still years behind. Sure, now we're able to use widgets and place widgets in whatever the place that we wanted to. I mean, Android has been able to do that for a long time. Stage Manager, now, yes, I'll take State Manager versus not having it, but when you're comparing it to DeX on Samsung tablets, that's a joke. I mean, DeX is so much more advanced in multitasking. It kind of feels like using a Windows PC, even though it doesn't run Windows. But the multitasking on DeX is so much ahead versus to comparing to Stage Manager. Stage Manager is held back by limitations. That's what a lot of products from Apple, limitations. Yes, there's iPad OS 18 that's around the corner. I'm hoping there's going to be a lot more advancements with 18, but at this point, it's just an iPad. So the question is, do you really need this beautiful, thinner, lighter iPad? That's actually more of one-handed friendly, but still not there. I think it's a little bit too big for it to be one-handed. Do you really need this new upgraded iPad? At this point, if you are using iPad Pro 12.9, whether it is M2 or M1, this is M1 chip with micro LED. Micro LED is a beautiful display. If you haven't seen it, go compare it, especially if you're using iPad Pro way in the back, those with the buttons, and you're thinking whether it's time for you to upgrade, if financially you have no issues and you could just jump and get the new iPad, this is an amazing iPad. Like, I love this iPad, especially with the new redesigned keyboard. Have it here. This is a must, as long as it financially makes sense. But if you're just cannot jump and go spend all that money, then this is a great option. It still does pretty much the same thing what this is able to do. Sure, this is now compatible with this Apple Pencil Pro, which is not compatible with this, but do you really need that extra Pro feature on the Apple Pencil Pro? Because the one that's compatible with this device is able to write, it's able to highlight, so about 95% of functionality are pretty much the same. So if money is an object and you need to upgrade because school, work, whatever the reason, and you're looking for an iPad Pro, but financially you want it to be smart, this is a great option, especially if you can get a great deal. This is M1, like, amazing iPad. Yes, the keyboard is a little bit thicker. It's not as cool like this one, for example. Look how back this goes. And then I had the older one, which was always a problem for me. It can't fully go back. This is as far as it goes versus this. And it's able to tilt backwards. But to me, this was an issue because the iPad ended over here, so it was very hard to type on this row. But at least there is a great keyboard that's functional with an iPad. So, and you could buy a pencil that's compatible with this iPad. And I'm sure you could get secondhand deals which are in like mint conditions, and you could definitely get a bargain with an older generation of iPads. So is there a need to upgrade at this point? No, not if you have M1 or M2. This is a luxury at this point. This is more of a want than need, unless the job or specific schooling education requires for this. But like I said, they're just both iPads. Now, if you're coming from the regular iPad, the Air, the iPad 10, there's so many iPads, it's very hard to remember which is which, and you just want to finally upgrade and go to brand new, then this has every box checked off. OLED panel, it's bright. It gets really bright. Now it has a landscape camera, but somehow I'm a right-handed person. This is where I hold my hand. So, and this is where the camera is. There's a lot of times where I'm holding it like this and I get an arrow that I'm blocking the camera. So landscape camera makes sense if you're using a keyboard, and it's an amazing face scanner. Like, it opens up so quick. But for a one-handed device, the camera that's on the portrait mode, it just makes more sense. At least I'm not getting that I'm blocking the camera, but when I'm holding it this way, I'm getting the same arrow that I'm blocking on that side. So is it worth upgrading? Not at this point. Micro LED is more than capable. The battery on this device, holy whoa. Like, this thing lasts for a long time. I know that Apple said that it's basically the same as these, but I think it's more. I haven't really actually counted. I just know that in the past, when using this iPad, after like the first 10 minutes just goes like this. This, like a lot of times I'm already using it. I watch several videos and browsed and stuff like that, and then I look at the battery, it's 97%. Yeah. The battery on this, I hope it stays the same. I know that a lot of new gadgets kind of learn from your usage, and the battery somehow gets better over time, unless it gets to a point where it starts aging. But I've had this since it was released, and this is M1, and the battery on this is still amazing. Still, I don't know if it's as good as it was when I first started using it, but it still pretty much gives me the same lifespan of the battery, like the usage wise. I could use it for hours. So yeah, the battery on this is great. The only thing I would say that's better on the 12.9 versus the 13 inch, and that's literally picking, is the speakers. I personally think the speakers on 12.9 is just a tad bit fuller versus the new M4 one. So let me just give you an example. Let me pause this videos. I'm gonna increase the volume to the highest. I'm gonna open up my epidemic sounds because I don't want to deal with copyright. So this is the 12.9 one. This is the 13 inch. Oh, it's so light. It's to the fullest volume. So again, the sound on both is amazing, like amazing. This, like, I mean, nowadays the speakers and the tablets are pretty good, but I've always considered Apple producing one of the best speakers on their phones and the tablets, but this one is great. It's just the 12.9 one is tad bit fuller sounding. So what I was referring to, like for example, my favorite, so you could use it portrait, landscape. So my favorite wallpaper application is Wallcraft. That's it. Just works in portrait. Really? So let me see over here. One of like, really? This is Instagram. says I'm on iOS 17.5. Yep, but it's still just an iPhone application, you know? That's all it does. Like, why do we still have iOS application format on iPad OS? Like, come on, these things are a lot more powerful now. We shouldn't be dealing with this. Anyway, so is this an amazing iPad? Absolutely. This iPad itself is absolutely amazing. Do I think it's worth upgrading from M1 and M2? Not at this point. Yes, thin, light, beautiful OLED panel, but it's still just an iPad. Now, if, let's say, iPad OS 18 brings a lot more powerful use out of iPad, then maybe makes sense. But this, let me just get rid of the sound. This is still very capable iPad. Still has 120 hertz display. Micro LED is a beautiful display. Amazing battery. Comes with keyboard. Has an Apple Pencil. If it can score this for a great price, then definitely go for something that's cheaper and still is more capable of doing a lot more than, for example, going out there and buying a device that's a lot more expensive. I mean, every time I pick up this one and then pick up this one, the light, the thinness, like this is, yeah. But the practicality and the smart use of finances, if you can afford, then go for the new one. If the finances is an issue and you still want to be in the pro era, area of the iPads, then M1 or M2. Okay, I'm gonna do individually videos on the 13 and the 11 separately. At the same time, I'm gonna cover the keyboards and not really gonna talk about an Apple Pencil Pro. Still an Apple Pencil, has some few pro features, but overall this video I'm comparing both of these, the 12.9 M1 and the M4 13. Okay, hopefully I answered some of the questions. I tried to avoid rambling, but yeah, let me just put this in the case so you guys could see. I'm gonna do separately video on the case. I mean, look at this. Look at this. This makes much more sense. Like, I love this case. Love it. Now, this case is not all perfect. Now, yeah, it has a bigger trackpad, but it's harder to open. Usually I end up placing this on the surface, and every time I do, I get this feeling like I'm scratching it because this thing is an aluminum. I have to put it on the surface in order to open it. You just can't open it like that. Like it's an effort that you have to do. So this makes me nervous. Now versus this one, which is, let me put in a case. All right, let's do it right here. This is what I really didn't like with this keyboard. And then when you're opening it, it's kind of in the way of this row right here. But at least I could place this material on the surface and don't feel like I'm scratching. And it's also easier to open. It's much easier to open. Maybe with the hinge, that's gonna change and it becomes easier. But because it's so flushed, so it's much harder. I find it harder to open it, but putting this on the surface makes me feel like I'm scratching it every time. That's basically it when comparing the 12.9 M1 or M2 versus M4 13-inch. If you have any questions or any comments, post below. Thanks for watching.